Welcome back to the Alcohol Free Revolution podcast. My name's James Lloyd,
And my name is Steve Smith.
and today we are going to do part one of a two-part social experiment, right, Steve?
It's something along the lines of lambs to the slaughter or throwing each other under a bus, something along those lines.
So to give you a bit more detail about this, so we had an idea a little while ago about potentially seeing what our wives thought about us being alcohol free, and this comes from the position of being asked quite regularly, when you say you're alcohol free, what does your partner think? What does your wife think? Does she drink? How's this affected her life? And has that been pretty much the same for you, Steve? Is that a question you get asked a lot?
Yeah, totally. And I've got to say that you had this idea, and it was a very good idea. I'm gonna agree. But
Oh, thank you.
and not only that, we're asked it quite a bit on the community, or we're asked through correspondence to us through online, and and also in our coaching, I guess that it's what will my other half think about it, or so it was definitely something we wanted to tackle in terms of a question, right?
Yeah, it's a big one. I'll be honest. I went to four weddings last year, and I must
Did
have
you go
had.
to a funeral as well?
I didn't. No, I was
Oh,
worried
come
going
on.
into the year that someone was going to die,
Well, I
and I
mean,
thought that would
it was
just
making,
be. But
yeah.
you know what it's like at weddings. You're out and you're chatting, and people are pissed and that kind of thing, and they're like, "Oh, what do you do? Da, da, da. Oh, how come you're not drinking?" All that kind of thing. And I must have had this question multiple times at each wedding, and just see, and Chris was always with me, and as soon as you say you don't drink, they immediately look at your wife, and ask. So I thought, why don't we do an episode about this, because it comes up all of the time, and it's a fear that people have, and people have different relationships with their partners around alcohol. Sometimes they're drinking buddies, sometimes their partners hate it, so there's a whole different experience for different people. But so we're doing a little intro here. We've already recorded these episodes. We're gonna hear from Steve's wife Jo, and then next week you're gonna hear from my wife Kristen. And I
Mm.
think having heard those two recordings back, there's some real fascinating insights that come out, and some real things that I noticed that are very similar about you and me that I didn't really kind of notice, even though we've spent a lot of time talking about booze together. So it's a really interesting insights coming out of it, I think.
Yeah, yeah, I totally agree. It
But
was
before we get into that, you mentioned the Alcohol Free Revolution community there, Steve. Where can people find out more about this, and what is it, first of all?
so the alcohol-free community is a we get together once a week on a Monday and we chat all things alcohol-free. It is not an AA meeting. It's just an opportunity for anyone who wants to join and come along for a free, and I stress that, free Zoom call where we just get together and have a good old chat about life being alcohol free or thinking about going alcohol free. And we share experiences from people who are either well on their journey or just about to start. And yeah, it's completely relaxed. There's no need to turn on your camera if you don't want to. You can come in and just join along. Yeah, and if you want to be part of it, then just drop us a quick email to and just the word interested to info at thealcoholfreerevolution.co.uk.
And that's at 12 o'clock on a Monday, right?
On a Monday. Yes,
Fantastic. Come and meet some other people on their alcohol free adventure.
absolutely.
Good stuff. Well, on with today's show then. So we have got your lovely wife, Jo, up next, and it was the first time I met her, and it was absolutely fantastic. And you are clearly punching. I just wanted to say, but I put that one out there. But yeah. So here's my interview with Jo Smith. Welcome back to the Alcohol Free Revolution podcast. It's a special experiment episode today. So we are joined by Jo Smith, who's Steve's wife, the significantly better half of the marriage, as I understand it. He'll just edit that bit out anyway, so don't worry. So today we're going to have a bit of a conversation with Jo about what it's like being married to somebody who doesn't drink, what it was like before, what it was like after, what Joe's views on alcohol. And yeah, and next time we're going to speak to my wife Kristen and compare notes. So Jo, welcome to the Alcohol Free Revolution podcast.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
It's brilliant. I should say as well, for the benefit of the listeners, we've never met before, so this is
No.
complete first time we've met. Although I've known Steve for year and a half, however long it is. It's the first time we met, so it's wonderful to meet you.
Nice to meet you too.
Really looking forward to this conversation. I think this is going to be absolutely fascinating. Here's where I find out that everything I thought I knew about Steve is actually a complete fabrication.
Yeah, it's all made up. Yeah.
Brilliant. Well, perhaps we start with just getting to know you a little bit, first of all, Jo. So for the people listening who don't know you, could you perhaps just tell us a little bit about yourself?
a little bit about myself. God, that's hard, isn't it? So I'm a mum of two boys. I'm a children's nurse. I've been nursing, my whole career, done lots of different sort of specialities, worked in lots of different countries. Probably met Steve kind of later in life, had the boys a bit later in life. So love being in the outdoors, love traveling. I do pottery now. I've kind of
How did
life's
you
an
guys meet?
adventure. So we met. So both of our sort of old childhood friends introduced us. They introduced us a few years before, actually, and and I think Steve was seeing someone at the time. I don't know, anyway. But and then we met again a couple of years later, and ended up. Did we go for a walk? I can't remember. Anyway, we ended up in the pub. This was, a funny story. Doing a pub quiz, we got absolutely smashed. Ended up opening the port, and it was a big night. I seem to remember. And then that was how we met. The next day, I left the house. I stayed at my friend's house and was walking her dogs, and he nearly ran me over. And that was kind of thing when we were like, oh, okay, yeah. The rest is history. Yeah.
He was telling me a story recently about how I don't know if you even know if you remember this, but it clearly resonated with him. Was that I think it was one of your first kind of couple of dates or so, and he borrowed a really flash car off one of his somebody he worked for. I think it was like I don't know what it was, a Ferrari or something like that.
Or something,
thinking he was going to like be showed up, and you didn't even register with you that you're like, yeah, so what?
Well, I seem to remember I was a bit hungover. I think we'd had a bit, and I'm into the classics. If he'd turned up in a convertible, I'd have been, But I think he was speeding down the motorway, and I was like, slow down. So.
Apparently you got in and just didn't say anything, didn't even reference this is a nice guy. Didn't say anything at all. And he's like, I
wasn't, But if he turned up at a nice old Morgan with the, roof down, I'd have been very impressed.
Oh, brilliant. I'm going to put you a bit on the spot. You might not be able to answer this straight away, but what's something about Steve that people might not know that you could share that isn't illegal?
That's not illegal. I think, he won the world championships, didn't he, for bar flare tending? I think maybe people do know that. I think a lot of our newer friends wouldn't know that.
So this is the weird thing. I think we spoke about that on the very first episode, and we've done nearly 40 now. And I honestly don't think we've spoken about that ever since. So unless you were listening to the first episode, you probably wouldn't know that. So which is amazing, because if that was me, I'd be like literally bringing it up every single episode.
I was quite impressed by that. And when we got married, I was like, come on, do a bit of bar flare tenting. But he keeps it quite under wraps, I'd say.
It's a bit like being married to a magician. You kind of want to, God, show us some of the bottle thread. Do us a few tricks. Because
he's actually not very good at it anymore, to be fair. So it's not that impressive, but I'm sure he would be if he picked it up again. But so that's superb. Probably and I think people sort of know about his his runs and things. That's obviously a sort of
that gets a lot talked about a lot more, I can assure you.
So
what was he like when you first met him?
Do you know, I always remember we went on this first date, and we went out for dinner. We had a nice bottle of Malbec. I'd never had Malbec before. So he really knew his wines, which I always found sort of quite attractive, but he definitely was quite overweight. Like he was sort of popping out of his shirt, and I was a bit like, oh God, that's not a good look, is it? But so we did probably, we did go out on quite a lot of dates, and it did always involve, a bottle of wine, a drink, and I can't even remember what the question was, James.
Just what was he like when you met him? But I think we've kind of gathered that he was quite fat. Yeah, okay, we've got it. That bit's going to end up on the cutting room floor. that won't make the edit, I'm sure.
He was. It feels like such a long time ago. I mean, he it was good fun. It was good fun. He's always been a bit grumpy, I'd say. Like he's always been a bit but I should know. I should I'm trying to even think the sort of stuff that we did. I mean, he was always up for everything. So I think, I'd sort of suggested, oh, let's go camping. He was always up for
Yeah.
stuff.
Did the outdoorsy side come from you?
I
Or was that
think,
something that you kind of
I think
bonded
he was
over?
always a runner. He was always a marathon runner. And I probably had lived in Canada and New Zealand and was very
right, wow.
much far more adventurous, I'd say. So I was up for getting the backpacks, going camping, and telling him about the sort of trail runs, really, like with the North Downs and things. So I would have said when I first met him, it was London Marathon, and I think the boys would say I'm more adventurous, as in, the quirky holidays, this, that, and the other. But Steve would deny that and say that he travelled and did everything, which he did. But I think a lot of the ideas would come from me, I would say, but he'd always be up for it.
Yeah. Oh, that's brilliant.
And we loved our skiing and snowboarding. That was a big thing. I mean, he was, and he's quite a cool snowboarder. So, he turned up with all these baggy trousers. I was like, what the?
That's super. You guys spent a bit of time in Whistler, didn't you? Steve was telling me.
Yeah, so we were both
Whistler.
there. We were both there at the same time, actually, with our friends that got us together. So that would have been, but I mean, if I had met him then, it wouldn't have happened.
Really? Why not?
I don't know. I think he was a bit of a cool kid, wasn't he? He was a bit of a, like jumping
I didn't know
off all
him,
that.
obviously.
Yeah, I think that's what kind of comes across. And he would have been doing all the jumps and everything else. And I think we would have and we still are quite different, actually, but it's kind of works.
Oh, that's fascinating. Thanks so much for sharing that. So, when in the earlier days when you guys got together, was drinking a big part of your social life?
Yeah,
it was.
Yeah,
for both of you.
For both of us, yeah. So I think, yeah, definitely. We always got the train everywhere. Like if we went to gigs, we'd always have a drink. We went out for dinner. It would always revolve around having a drink, I would say. Yeah.
What does sort of a typical weekend look like?
What, in back then?
Yeah, before Steve went alcohol free.
Would have been going to a gig, like getting the train somewhere, getting a taxi back, going out for dinner, going out with friends. But it would always, it would always involve a taxi, a train, a bit of, if we were going to London, a bit of a negotiation. Yeah, So it did always involve drinks. Yeah.
What about at home? Is there much sort of drinking at home going on? Yeah,
I would have said when we first met, we would have drunk every night,
really?
As in got home, had a glass of wine. It would have really. And I think, I don't think his dad drank, but his brother drank quite a lot. So if we went out with them, it would, it'd be away camping for the weekend. It'd be, a lot around the drink and stuff. So, and then I guess, probably because we met a bit later, we had kids reasonably early. So yeah, it would be more have a nice meal at home, a couple of nice bottles of wine, that's kind of what it was around. Yeah.
And at the time, did you see it at any point as becoming a bit of a problem? Was there any point where you thought, it's becoming a bit much?
Yeah, I mean, I think with Steve, if he does something, he does it 100%. So it was probably the same with the drinking, and I think it probably hit home, when we had the kids, I guess, because it was more, even. I just remember, we had like a hot tub and you'd sit in the hot tub and I'd have one glass of wine and he'd have like 3 beers, and it was, it did become a little bit more like he couldn't, even if you went to the pub, he couldn't just have one beer, it would definitely be, well, who's driving? He'd be like, well, we've just done a walk and stopping for a pub lunch sort of thing. It's not, I don't know.
Session.
Yeah, it's not a session. It's a, and, he'd have a pint of beer and he'd still have half a pint and he'd be up getting the next beers in. So we've got to go in half an hour. It's that kind of thing that was like, actually, why can't you just, why can't you just have one glass of wine, with lunch? So I think it definitely, you sort of started to notice probably when I had the boy, the kids as well, I didn't really feel like drinking quite as much. And then I guess the other thing with Steve is always his work. So, I mean, he used to go out, on massive benders with, the restaurant industry and where he was working. So it was never just the weekend, you know, it'd often be like Wednesday night coming in really drunk at 2 in the morning, and, you know, so I guess that's when you start to think, you know, I did drink a lot when I was sort of younger, and then I was quite happy with a glass of wine. It wasn't necessarily going out on these big sessions, which Steve probably just carried on, you know, for quite a long period of time.
Yeah, I think spoiler alert, that's going to be quite true for Chris as well.
Yeah, yeah.
If I was to tell me if I've got this wrong, but it sounds like what you're describing is Steve, somebody perhaps who doesn't have an off switch, and you're somebody who can take it or leave it. Is that a good
Yeah, I mean,
description?
I think this came up in the first one, and I think Steve said Joe can take it or leave it, and a lot of my friends were like, "Oh, I don't think so."
No.
But so I don't think. I think I've always liked, you know, like to drink. Definitely now I can take it or leave it, and I think, um, yeah. So I wouldn't describe myself as that maybe necessarily, but
Okay.
it's it's that sort of, I think I'm got a bit more, it's just moderation. Yeah, so I would still always like a glass of wine. Like if we had a roast, I would like a glass of wine, but I could probably have one glass. I wouldn't need to
Yeah.
finish the bottle, you know, like that's the maybe the difference. So I, you know, I do like
Have
a
you
glass
always,
of wine.
moderation is a really fascinating topic, and that's
Yeah,
something else that comes up
yeah,
all the time. And I think people who probably identify that they're drinking too much want to get to the stage where they can moderate. But one of the things that I see quite a lot is people who can moderate have always been able to moderate because they've not gone beyond a certain level. Is that true for you, or have you
yeah,
managed to rein it
yeah.
back in?
Whereas I
That's
would
enough
say
to.
Steve's not even like, you know, now with the running, you know, it's like the new kind of obsession, isn't it? It's, you know, he puts
Yeah.
everything into it. Whereas I would say everything in life, I'm a bit more, yeah, I'll do a bit, but I'm not brilliant at anything, or, you know, like it's not. So yeah,
It's really fascinating.
I
Here,
think I can. But I think you know, since Steve stopped drinking, I could say, yeah, I've definitely calmed down, you know, slowed down and see the benefits probably. Yeah.
was there ever a point? Was there ever a point where you felt that alcohol was starting to create tension between the two of you?
Um, yeah, probably. I mean, I definitely, when the boys were younger, I mean, I don't know if he ever told you that one. I mean, I look back now, I think that's so shocking. I mean, Tom must have been, or Jack, so, you know, new baby, I think he must have been 2 months old, and Steve went out drinking and fell asleep on the train.
I've
And,
heard that one
you
about
know,
60 times.
yeah, I mean,
That's
it's
it.
so
Yeah,
awful,
it's a big
isn't
one.
it? Like
It's a big
now
one.
I sort of think, geez, like that is, um, you know, and how old was he? I don't know. Like, you know, he was sort of in his 40s. I mean, and it's, so I think it's, but I couldn't have ever said anything at that time because he would have been he would have taken real kind of offense to
Mm.
that. So I think it definitely did cause friction. Now, whether it was, you know, yeah, you know, you sort of look back and go, yeah, it was the alcohol, but I guess it was sort of all of it, wasn't it? It was going out late. It was the, you know, everything involved in these sort of weekends away, and then he wasn't very present, really. I would have said when the
That's a
kids were
great
younger.
description.
Yeah, yeah,
That's a really
he
good
just,
description.
yeah, he was kind of there. He'd be like, I've done my bit, and
So
then you know,
do you think that moment when he fell asleep on the train, do you think that was kind of, I wouldn't, it's not a rock bottom moment. Do you think that was a realization moment where there was a bit of a fork in the road and kind of, okay, I think things need to change?
I don't think it was necessarily. I mean, I
Really?
think it was, well, was it? I mean, he didn't. You know, when did he give up? I think 6 years later. So I don't think, I think it was more, um, yeah, I mean, he didn't stop from there, and he didn't, you know, I think he'd have little jolts, you know, little jolts of maybe, oh yeah, you know, but, and he used to be extremely, I mean, he's still quite forgetful, but I mean, it used
He
to
is. I noticed that.
literally, I mean, and he'll say now he's good. And I think, well, yeah, can you imagine how awful you were? I mean, you know, he was awful, you know.
I'm glad you said that. It's not just me because I've always been like, if we move the time of the pod recording, I was like, Steve, you know it's next Thursday, right? You know it's at 10 a.m. Yeah, I've got it. And then like, he'd be like, oh shit, I forgot I put something else in. I'm glad
Yeah,
you said
yeah.
that. I thought it was
But
just
I
me.
mean, no, and everyone would say that, and Steve, I think, would say that he was a lot better, and he's very sensitive around that. But he's a lot better than he was. I mean, you know, he used to leave the house and literally
Forget where he's going.
Yeah. You know, 10 minutes later, he's still coming in and out. I forgot this, forgot that. You know, when you've got kids, I was just like, oh, it's just like having another child.
This is gold.
Yeah.
So do you remember do you remember when Steve first started talking about stopping drinking or taking a break, or was this something that was going on in his head that he kept to himself?
Probably kept it to himself. You know, he wanted to do. He'd said about doing his first Ironman, and that he was going to kind of give up. You know, just take a break for a bit. So to do his first Ironman, um, and then I think that was when it almost clicked, because it was then like something else was replacing it, wasn't it? You know, he found his passion. He was obviously very good at it, and I think that's what I would say with Steve. There's always something, you know. It's like then he became so ultra focused on that. So I think the process happened kind of reasonably slow. You know, he had often given up. So he'd always say, oh, I'm not, you know, I'm fine because I can give up for dry January, or he'd given up for a couple of months before, I think. But yeah. So I don't think I ever really maybe thought that he would. And then I think I remember feeling, oh, I don't know if I really want you to give up completely, you know,
that's really interesting.
Actually, I want to still be able to go out and have nice meals and that nice bottle of wine that's a treat, you know, and I can't do that on my own.
That's really interesting perspective, because that's really I guess the kernel of what I'm trying to get at is what your how did you think this was going to affect you? You know, what was your initial reaction when he said, I'm not going to drink again ever? Or did he ever say that?
But I don't think he's ever. He does now, but he didn't say that.
Left the door open.
For a long time. He was just like, oh, I might. And interestingly, was it France 2 years ago? And you know, we went to the wineries, and I was a bit like, oh, I feel like a bit of an idiot wine tasting on my own. But he did actually, you know, try a little bit. So he's still, you know, and sort of comments on the taste and things. So, and I would say, you know, I was worried he was going to be a real bore, but actually he's not at all, you know.
That's fascinating.
Yeah.
So you were initially a little bit worried about how it would affect your relationship and your social life.
Well, I guess so, because I guess a lot of our, you know, what we did was involved around, you know, it was, you know, a nice meal and a nice bottle of wine. You'd spend a bit of money on a nice bottle of wine, or you know, that kind of was a lot of what we enjoyed doing, you know. So and I think for me, you know, I lived in New Zealand. I used to go to all the wineries. That was something I loved doing, you know, nice bottle of wine, and sort of it was all, you know, quite important really. But so I was worried about that. I did think, oh.
So I guess was it a case of mixed feelings then? Because did you feel, because you spoke about earlier how you felt that, you know, he was drinking too much, but then I guess you've got kind of conflicting view of but
I guess it's that difference, isn't it? And that's where it's the issue, because I could have gone out and had a nice meal and shared one nice bottle of wine. You know, Steve probably couldn't do that, because it'd be, right, well, let's go for drinks first, then afterwards, right, okay, let's go to the pub after, you know. So then you end up completely drinking way too much, rather than, you know, making a nice glass of wine last and have a bottle for the evening, kind of thing. So I think that's the little bit, isn't it? And
yeah, for sure.
You know, when we talk about it now, like, I've definitely cut down, but I said I don't really want to give up. I still want to have my nice glass of wine, and if it's a special occasion, have a glass of champagne with my friends, you know, like, but I don't need to get absolutely, that's the difference. And I think
it is,
when
it really is.
Yeah, when we both drank, he would definitely be there, right, I'm going to get another drink, or let's have another bottle, or so that's
it's really fascinating talking to you, because everything that you're saying is, I don't want to sort of spoil it for when Steve talks to Chris, but it's almost exactly the same. So you know, I'd be like, you know, getting another pint in before I'd even finished the first one, and Chris be like,
Yeah, that used to drive me mad.
why can't you just have
Mad.
one? Why do you have to have like five? Why can't you just have
Yeah.
one? And that's it. And this is obviously, we want listeners to understand this, is people think that perhaps it's just them that can't just have one and leave it, but it's so common.
Yeah.
A lot of people have that response to alcohol. But also a lot of people can take it or leave it, but people are different. But it's so fascinating to hear you talk about it, because it's everything that you're saying. I've never heard it from Steve in that way, because it's very difficult to sort of self-critique yourself. But when you hear it from the other person, I'm just hearing myself in you as you describe Steve, but I've never heard him put it in those terms.
Yeah.
So it's really, really, really fascinating. So moving on to after he stopped, what was it like in the early sort of weeks after he stopped drinking? Did you kind of notice anything about how how was he when he first cut it out?
I probably, if I'm honest, I probably didn't see him that much, because then he had become a bit obsessed with his Iron Man, hadn't he? So it was literally,
so it was a bit of a swap
never
then.
here. Yeah, it was literally never here. He'd be out swimming, right, doing this, doing that, which yeah. So and I would say, so initially he'd very much be like, oh, I don't know if I want to go and do that, so I think like occasions, say if we were going out, he'd be a bit more, I don't know if I want to go on that night out, because he wasn't drinking.
Yeah.
So there was a little bit of that initially. I would have said, I mean, he says he felt he changed straight away. I don't think that, because I think the big thing for me now is he's far more present, but I think that took quite a long time. I don't think that was an instant thing. So the instant stuff, I'm trying to think, he probably lost quite a lot of weight, and he was doing his fitness as well. So, that was all good. I think the snoring probably improved.
Oh yeah, he's mentioned that before.
Yeah, but it's still, I mean, listen, he still snores.
He's still
he
horrendous.
does promise me he doesn't, but it's still there, but it's not to the same degree, that horrible drunk slumber, horrible
old man snore.
Yeah, it's just so that's improved. He lost weight. I would have said, I mean, I'm just trying to think. I mean,
this is gold.
I would have said it was all fairly gracious, actually, which surprised me, because I did feel there was going to be a bit of, oh, do you need a drink tonight, or do you need that, or and there wasn't. He never sort of questioned me, or again, he became quite obsessed with listening to the podcasts and things, like, over the influence. That community was really important to him, because I guess, he probably was his own, he was the only one of his friends that had given up drinking. His brother still drank a lot. All his friends, I would say, drink quite a lot. And he was still in that industry where they, the restaurant world. So I think he probably, just sort of the sport definitely took over. So it wasn't that he just stopped and still lived his same life. I guess that's the thing. Then the sport and doing all that became the replacement.
The replacement.
Yeah.
And has it changed the way that you guys spend time together?
I mean, I think, life's busy, because we've got the kids, so it's, life's busy anyway. We don't tend to go out for meals. Well, I was saying that we went out for my birthday, but he still drinks alcohol free, and that would be so I don't think necessarily, like, we still go and listen to music. We still do all the same stuff. But in many ways, we don't go out for as many meals, but that's probably because we've got the kids and it's really expensive. So we don't tend to, he used to tend to cook like a nice meal and get a nice bottle of wine. We don't tend to do that as much.
Yeah.
Maybe that's just because we haven't got time. I don't know. But we'll go out for bike rides So has it changed? I mean, possibly. It feels like quite a long time now. It's coming up 5 years, isn't it?
It is. It's a long time.
I think.
I guess you naturally evolve in that time anyway, don't you?
Exactly. So I can't. What I'm saying, it hasn't changed. It's not that we can't go to a gig anymore. We can still go to the pub and watch live music. We can still do all this stuff. So in many ways it hasn't changed, and he drives, so it's a bonus, really.
That's amazing, because this is the thing that so many people kind of struggle with, is they sort of think, oh yeah, but all the things that I do are built around alcohol, and which they are for most people, and you think, well, I can't lose all those things, what am I going to do? I'll be boring. But you can do all those things without alcohol. There's nothing you cannot do without alcohol that you can with it's great to hear you say that.
Yeah, well, I think, in many ways, like, we went to a few weddings and I was a bit like, oh my God, Steve's up and dancing. I was like, what are you doing? And actually,
Sit down. You're embarrassing me.
But, in many ways, he would have been absolutely hammered to have done that before. So actually what it's done is given him this freedom of almost, because I guess he's a bit like, well, everyone's drunk and they can't actually put 3 words together. So he'll get up and dance. So actually,
no one cares. This is the thing. No one cares what you're doing.
They're
worried about themselves.
Yeah, exactly. And so actually, he's still just as fun. Probably more fun actually now to go out with, because he's a bit more present, really. I keep coming up with that word.
No, but
it's
that's
what it is. Because
but that's
otherwise,
so important. That's really sort of shining through. What kind of impacts it had on, if you don't mind asking, on like your home life, and the kids and things like that?
Yeah, I mean, now it's life. It's just completely different. I mean, I do not know how it would be now with 2 busy boys if he was still drinking like that. Actually, because they're hard work. They're challenging, aren't they? They answer back. They do this. They do that, and he wouldn't have had the tolerance, I don't think, to have coped with it. So he's got far more patience. He's far more involved. He really inspires the boys, with his running, and I think with how much they understand the alcohol free. I don't know.
He talks about that a lot on the pod. Actually,
I mean, I think they do. I think they kind of do, and I've given up booze for Lent, and my youngest is like, "Well done, mummy." Had to drink.
Daddy's example.
So I think they definitely understand that it's a big thing, and I'd say he's far more engaged, and he's got that headspace, so to do stuff with them and be present, whereas I guess when they were younger, it'd be a lot more of, well, I've done my hour. Did you feel a bit like that? I've done my hour with them, and now,
I get to have a drink. Yeah, he's spoken about that before on the pod, actually, how, you're looking back, how he kind of felt that he'd be like rushing through reading a story so he could get downstairs and have a beer. And when you look at that, with fresh eyes and fresh perspective, you sort of think, why would I do that? And so making that trade-off is, what you're gaining is huge, isn't it? Is it? Do you think he's I guess? Do you think he's a different version of himself now? Maybe, I don't want to say a better version. That's not for me to say, but do you think he's?
Yeah, I mean, he hasn't. He's still Steve. Like, he's still, he's still very determined. He's still, and I think the thing is, he's so passionate about this, and I guess he wants, with his coaching and everything, he so wants to change lives, because and actually now he will say, yeah, I had a definite alcohol problem, whereas initially he'd be like, well, no, he didn't admit that for a long time. I would have said it's taken quite a lot of self-reflection to look back and say, yeah, I wasn't really present when the boys were younger, and I was, but my priorities were all wrong, really. So I think now he wants to help other people to be the best they can be, which, and he does recognize, that some people can maybe still have the odd drink, but it's a lot of people, and a lot of maybe men, who that is just so ingrained in them. And I think it's still, and I think what he talks about, and that is still there, isn't it? That, how we've all been, we're so socialized in this country. Drinking is just so ingrained. It's such a,
it really
it's so part of our sort of life that, even when he first gave up, we couldn't go camping without him getting his alcohol-free beers. Now, that did drive me mad, because I just think, for goodness sake, it's not even a drink, but that it's still that social, that's acceptable, isn't it, to have a can of beer, like
it's the ritual. It's a ritual.
It's the ritual,
so being part of the tribe.
So that has calmed down, definitely. That was still you know, God, when he first came out, you know, he used to drink 8 alcohol-free beers. I just think, for goodness sake. And that was probably when I realised, yeah, you really did have quite a problem. Because I guess when you're living with it, you know it's there, but you don't maybe realise quite how big a problem it is when you're
It's
living with
fascinating
it.
that actually, because again, that was my experience as well. When I first went alcohol free and started getting into alcohol free beers, I was drinking tons of them. You literally
Yeah.
like a replacement. But then
Yeah.
gradually probably wasn't that long actually, maybe over a few months, you just don't need to drink that amount, and you end up drinking
Yeah.
like a couple a night, and
Yeah.
that's
Yeah.
fine, because
Yeah.
you wouldn't drink 8 pints of water a night, would you?
Yeah.
You might drink a couple. But yeah, it's so fascinating to hear you hear you speak. Do you think?
Yeah.
I know your boys are 8 and 12. Is that right? Or 9 and
9 and 11. Yeah.
9 and 11. That's
Yeah.
close.
Yeah.
Do you think they've noticed any change? Or perhaps your older son.
Yeah. I don't know. Tom's inside. I could go and ask him. I mean, he's the youngest. I don't know, because I guess what would they have been? Tom would have been 4. So I don't think. I think Jack, the eldest, possibly. I think he'd say Daddy's far more engaged. I think, but whether he'd relate that to the alcohol, I don't know. I don't know. I think that's, yeah. I mean, they know, you know, they know about it, and it's probably because they'll have heard him talking. Whether they, I don't know, actually. Yeah, so it's talked about, but I don't know if they would relate it to the alcohol, if
And
if
do you
that
feel
makes
like?
sense.
Yeah, I know what you mean. Do you feel like since Steve's made this change, that you're in a better position as a family, as a partnership, and are you happier as a result of him going alcohol free, or was it neutral, or what's your
I
overall
think,
assessment?
yeah, I think it's hard, isn't it? Because the kids are young. He's definitely kind of more present. He definitely takes the load a bit more. I think as well. So I was in a very stressful job, sort of when he so he'd given up. So quite a lot changed probably in quite a lot of time. So I was in quite a demanding, stressful job when the boys were young as well. So actually, life when they were young was probably quite fraught. I can look back and go, oh yeah, it was quite a fraught. Probably I was very stressed, very overwhelmed with life. Steve drank, it was all a bit fractious. So life has definitely improved. But it's the alcohol free, but probably lots of other things as
Yeah,
well.
sure.
I couldn't just
You can't pin
it down
just
to
to
one
that.
thing. So I think, now my job's a lot less stressful. I'm able to kind of recognize, yeah, we need to share the load. Now, I think, he's far more communicative and able to sort of see things. He's generally a lot calmer, yeah, so it's a bit easier. But so I can't pin it totally on giving up the booze, but I think if it had carried on, I don't think we'd be together still. Like probably
Wow.
if that kind of that
That's
fraughtness of not being able to really talk to him or say anything to him, or him being able to take any of the load, which
yeah. So that, I mean, that's obviously pretty significant, right? So you think it would be to that extent, then if he was still drinking, you don't think you'd be together?
Well, I think family life was so fraught. It just you couldn't have carried on like that. Really,
Wow.
is what I would feel. I think.
So
But whether, like you say, there was quite a lot of
yes, of
change
course.
going
Okay.
on, and other stuff as well. So I feel, I mean, I don't know if he's talked anything about some of the challenges with his dad. I don't know if that's ever come up.
Yeah, he has
It can
mentioned it to me.
be, yeah. I definitely feel if he hadn't been drinking then, he would have dealt with that a lot better.
Resolved
So
it.
yeah, I think he was quite reactive to a lot of things. This probably won't go in, which is fine. But I think his ability to be calmer and think things through and not be quite as reactive and quite as volatile. He probably was a lot more volatile in that his reactions to things. I think there's things he would have dealt with a lot better in life if he hadn't been drinking.
This has been a really
So-
really fascinating insight. Thanks for sharing this. Just one more
Yeah.
question just before we wrap up. If someone's listening and they're worried, about how their partner will react if they were to stop drinking, what would you say to them?
I mean, I think it's a really individual thing, isn't it? I think, for me, it's been great. Steve's not tried to, he's not judged me. He's, he he's far more present. We still do all the same stuff. I think it would have been very different if he suddenly then didn't want to go out at all, told me, I was drinking too, if he had then judged me, that would have been a very different story and outcome, I think. So I think generally people are far more aware of that alcohol is a problem. And I nowadays I meet a lot of people that have definitely cut down. And so I guess it's that thing, isn't it? Do they have to give up totally? I think that's an individual choice, isn't it? And it's kind of what works. And I think for me, I've definitely reduced, and as I've reduced, I've realized, oh yeah, that it's not great in many ways, but everybody's journey is different, aren't they? So I think somebody that's drinking like Steve was drinking, that then can take a month off and thinks they haven't got a problem. Actually, you probably have got quite a big problem, but it
You've
probably
just
will.
paused it for a month.
Yeah.
I think you hit the nail on the head, though. It's about, it all goes back to the moderation piece, doesn't it? I think if it's very, very difficult to moderate if you're somebody who can't just have one, which is very much what you've described Steve to be like, and that's exactly what I was like.
Yeah.
And I think for people that who do have that compulsion, I think stopping for a prolonged period really is the only way to go. It's almost impossible to moderate if you're going for another pint before you finish the last one, and it's very different for people, because people look around and they sort of think, yeah, but I know loads of people who can moderate, so why can't I just do that? And they aim for that, to try and almost have their cake and eat it. And the reality is like you've just said, Joe, people have very different relationships to alcohol, and what works for one person doesn't mean it's going to work for another.
Yeah. And then like, what does that, what does moderation mean,
Exactly.
And I think that,
of course,
that's the thing, and I guess when you were drinking what Steve was drinking, then moderation does feel like, I only drink Friday, Saturday, Sunday. It's like, okay, but you drunk a bottle a night Friday, Saturday, Sunday. Exactly. So that's not really moderation, is it?
No. Oh, it's been wonderful speaking to you, Joe. Thank you so much for everything you share, because I think it's really important for people to kind of hear the perspective from the other side of the table, from somebody's partner, about when somebody goes alcohol free, and because it can create a lot of fears in people, I think. And I think what you shared today really sort of shows that the opposite happens, that things generally get better. If they don't get worse, they get better. And thanks so much for everything you shared, and it's been really wonderful talking to you. I thoroughly enjoyed it.
Thanks, James.
Thanks,